everyone. Welcome to Ascentria's foster parent Q&A webinar. I almost forgot the name, but you are in the right place if you're here to learn more about foster care at Ascentria. My name is Colleen Schroth, and I'm the Community Outreach Manager at Ascentria Children and Family Services in Massachusetts. And I'm joined here today by Angelica, who is one of our experienced foster parents. So today is going to be all about your questions. Although in this style webinar, we cannot see or hear you. So in order to enter your questions today, you're just going to type them into the question panel or the chat panel and submit them. And we will be able to see those, read those out, and get your questions answered. But before we turn it over to the questions that you have, I did want to give a brief introduction to Ascentria, and then we'll let Angelica speak more about the real experience of all of that. So Ascentria Care Alliance is one of the largest human services nonprofits in New England. We're in all New England states but Rhode Island. And we have a wide spectrum of services, from services for older adults, services with disabilities, services for new Americans, refugees and immigrant services. So a lot of different programs. But of course, today we are highlighting our foster care programs in Massachusetts. So there are two programs, main programs in Massachusetts at Ascentria. There's the intensive foster care program out of Brockton, Mass, and there's the unaccompanied refugee minors program out of Worcester. So both of these programs serve unique populations of youth. IFC works with the state, with Massachusetts children that have entered DCF custody and provides them with high-level support based on their needs. And then the unaccompanied refugee minors program, which we call the URM program for short, serves immigrant and refugee youth. So a very unique program, and actually the only of its kind in New England. And it just so happens that that's the program that Angelica is experienced with. So that's really what you'll be learning more about this evening. But if you want to learn more about either program, after today's webinar, I'll be sending out a resource email where you can find out more and also get in touch with us. So thank you for being here. We do have our first message in the chat from Sarah, and she says, "Hi, Angelica, good to see you." So yes, welcome, Sarah, and welcome to everyone. But before we start with any specific questions, I wanted to leave it open-ended to you, Angelica, to introduce yourself, talk about, why you decided to foster, how long you've been doing it, and, just any main points of how you'd like to introduce your family.
Oh, sure. So my name is Angelica Brisk, and my family is a little bit complicated, but the main points are that we are a couple with 3 kids between us, 3 biological kids between us, and our 3 children are out of the house. One of them is about to turn 27, which is shocking to me. Then we have about to turn 24 and about to turn 23. So they're all out of the house, on their way into their lives. Over many years, we've had also different kids come into our house for different reasons. We had exchange students come and live with us. We've had kind of kids that our friends were the best friends with, who adopted us as a second family and stayed with us, not adopted in the real sense, but stayed a lot of time with us and talked with us. And then I had at one point a student, I'm a high school teacher, and I had a student who needed a place to go, and I ended up, that was my introduction to DCF. I ended up being his respite care. And that was the beginning of our interest in doing this in a real way, because that experience actually was very unstructured with no supports. We just I just knew this kid needed a place to stay in order to be able to finish graduating. It was his senior year, and he was upended completely because of the death of his grandmother and a lot of other factors. And it was a positive experience in that providing housing that moment changed the course of whether this kid was going to be able to graduate and move on in a positive direction or not. And negative in other ways, in the sense that a lot of the conversations that I wish we had had during his time with us, and a lot of the sort of working together with an agency, that didn't happen because of just the last minute nature of it. And also my husband and I knew nothing really about the system. So that's just an introduction. We ended up deciding we wanted to do this more officially. When we talked to our kids about it, they thought, great idea. So that was really nice to have their support. I talked to my parents about it. They also felt really strongly that it was a good idea. So it was really important to have everybody kind of on board, and not it. And I also felt like it was really important that this was not a reaction to being empty nesters. This was not us trying to replace our children. We were pretty clear where and why.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, and I think it's great when there are empty nesters that want to foster, because now they have maybe the space and the time. And I think, you know, the desire to grow your family is a really good reason. But definitely we want you to feel fulfilled in other areas of your life. And I think something that you highlighted, Angelica, that I really liked is the support of other family too, and how you did talk to extended family about this decision. A lot of people ask, you know, how do you make that decision? How are you sure that you're ready? And I think that's one good step, is to talk with other people in your life, in your support system, because if you don't have their support, it will be really hard to do this. Because no one can do it alone, right? It takes a village, and foster care definitely holds that value close to heart. Great. So I definitely invite all of our audience members to enter questions into the chat. So again, if you're new to this platform, you'll see a control panel over to your right, and there you can enter questions into the question or chat bar. Just type it in and click send, or use the enter key, and we'll be able to see those questions. So no question is too big or too small to ask Angelica this evening about her foster care journey, what it means to be a foster parent, you know, what are some of those experiences. So I guess to get us started, Angelica, I'll ask, you know, how long have you been fostering for the URM program? And maybe what are some of those initial experiences you've had with your first couple of placements?
So yeah, let's see, I think we had our final approval in sometime in July 2021. And so we're fairly new to this, I would say. And then we had a respite placement with a young person who was at the very tail end of their time in the program, and in college, but losing housing and needed, just again, actually not unlike my student, just needed that little bit of help to make sure that they could make the right decisions, good decisions, for a positive outcome for their next steps in life. And that 2 weeks was filled with a lot of drama, I have to say. This person was in a really, really hard place. They were having a difficult relationship, which they still are in that relationship, but they found some equilibrium. And part of that was conversations, I think, that we were able to have. My husband and I were able to sit and talk about, you know, what good, supportive, loving relationships look like. And what was really clear for us this person had been in a group home. There hadn't been a foster home available when they came into the program at the time. And he's become a really close part of our family, knows my parents, knows all my kids, came by Christmas Eve just to check in after only staying with us 2 weeks in August. And it's because having this touchstone of a family in the States, even though he has very close ties with his family in Iraq, and I've met them over the phone, and it's not that he's not in touch, and it's not that he doesn't ask his parents for advice and everything. It's just that the context is different, and their advice from there about life here doesn't always match the need. And so for him, being able to just come by and have a cup of coffee, which he did just the other day, and talk about the next thing that he's trying to decide, and it's not always high stakes at this point. Now he knows he doesn't have to have a high stakes decision to talk with us about. It just could be like, I'm thinking about this, and I didn't love this course. He's in his last semester in college, and it's really nice, and it's making a difference, I think, for him, and it's been really great for us. I mean, we really enjoy. In the middle, I have to say, in the middle of those weeks, in those 2 weeks, we were like, what have we gotten ourselves into? However, on the flip side, we see a young person who's really like finding their balance. And I do think some parenting helps that. Some parent, like, it's not like we're making all his decisions for him, and it's not like we're taking on loans for him or anything, but just that sense of a parent nearby, I think, helps him feel a little bit more in balance. And that was a great first experience. It was very eye-opening. Just what war trauma or other kinds of trauma can look like, and how it can manifest in, fear of lots of things. We are foster care with a 14-year-old, and again, there was eye-opening moments where my husband and I go, oh my goodness, it's been 10 years since we've had a 14-year-old in the house. And if you have had a 14-year-old in your house and know what adolescents are like, yeah, it's a lot. It's fun, but it's also a lot. And I was saying to Colleen earlier that there are times when we just had to really remind ourselves and really coach each other, and reach out to, like, I reach out to my mom a lot and say, oh my gosh, this and this and this, just to be able to let it go, because 14-year-olds can get really upset about many things. And so on a daily, we have to take this day by day with him, with our young person, because he's gone through some serious trauma where one day he'll be extremely upset and talking about something that really, really traumatic, really hard for us to imagine, even in our lives with lots of different things having happened, but traumas that would be hard to imagine. And it breaks your heart that a young person had to go through that. And then the next day he'll be equally emotionally invested in talking about how upsetting the zit that you cannot see is. So this person is, like all of us, a nexus of so many different experiences. The experience of being a refugee and a child, with all the experiences and cultural experiences that they had, and they are a 14-year-old adolescent in the very much a similar way. And so it's just like, when Colleen said it's good to have that bigger family, it's just good. It's not always easy after a day of work. Both of us work full time, to remind yourself, like, this is their story, not yours. This is their trauma, not yours. And you're just here to listen and be calm. And in the same way where sometimes that was hard with our own biological children, And we'd get upset about being on that emotional roller coaster with them. Talking to our friends, talking to our family members, it helped us remind us, like, that this is their life, not yours. Chill out. But I think it's even more so when you're talking about young people who've gone through the kind of trauma that some of these kids have gone. So yeah, that's the experience so far. It's kind of a blast in the way that it has changed the culture of our family, and it's really enjoyable to see that we could have so many different languages at the table, and so many different traditions coming into each holiday. Even though the holidays can be a hard time, they were also very, very lovely. And we made tamales this year because our kiddo is from Guatemala, and the tradition, it's a beautiful tradition of giving tamales to people as part of the holidays. So we gave, we made them all together and we gave them to his teachers, and it was really lovely. It was a really nice moment.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great example too. And I think you've said a lot. So I want to pause to see if there's questions, and I mean that in a good way, Angelica, to give folks, that real side of this experience, because I can get up here and I can, tell you about the qualifications of a foster parent and the paperwork that's involved and those types of things. But to really hear about the lived experience is really valuable. So we do have a question here from Julie. She said, you mentioned both of you work full time. Would you say hosting a young refugee has more needs than your own kid, that you need to be more available to give rides to places, etc.?
That's a great question, and it's very much on point. We have had to do some adjustments and really think about how to schedule our time around the first few months. So our kiddo's been here with us since September, and they came from a very rural part of Guatemala. So getting on a bus was a big deal. Walking 30 minutes to go to school that's supposedly in the same town was a big deal. So we really did have to make ourselves more available in the beginning, and also because of his situation, he can't have a cell phone yet, and that we've had moments where we've kind of missed cues and didn't end up in the same place and panic, but we did a lot of work in the first couple of weeks to orient where and how, and like riding the bus with him. Most of the time I take him to school, or my husband takes him to school. I pick him up, or my husband picks him up. And now that he's involved in more activities, it's really helped. And I should say that my husband does work from home. That doesn't mean he can just get up and do anything at any time, because he has meetings that he has to be at, and he can't be he can't attend them on the phone. So that has been tricky. Now that he is more involved, he's running track, and that has been great for him and great for us. Just gives us a little bit more of a buffer in the day. And also just, he feels so much better getting that exercise. He was doing workouts at our house. We were making sure that he had everything he needed to do workouts and to get some exercise. He was walking with our dog. And I should say, well, our dog has been a central character in the process of helping kids feel good in our home. We were really nervous about the fact that we have animals, and we didn't want anyone to have allergies and have that be an issue, because we were gonna not we were going to choose our animals because they were part of the family. The opposite has happened. Our dog has gotten very close to, in both cases, got very close to the kids. And for instance, our first foster kiddo, he came by for coffee, but he also came by to walk the dog because he wanted to spend time with her. And we'll see our dog when our current guy comes home, our dog sits with him and guards him, and it's just, and they fall asleep sometimes, and there's a lot of snuggling, and sometimes the dog is the person that he wants to really like hang out with, and that's just been really nice. It also sometimes helps, like if he's hanging out with the dog, then he, we're doing other things, and I think the other piece is it's surprising how many of our daily activities, like how to brush your teeth, or how to use a washing machine, or how to use a dishwasher, or how to where to find gel for your hair, or I'm trying to think of little things that you take for granted that seem so easy. And I remember teaching my kids sort of like at 10 and 11 when I was going for my master's, I was teaching them all these things that they needed to know in order to be able to be helpful around the house. And it's just very different. And as we've been clear about teaching or where food is, because our young person never had a refrigerator, ever. So the refrigerator in the first place, the idea that the refrigerator and the freezer do different things, and you could find one thing in the refrigerator and one thing in the freezer, and not everything goes in there. All that, it seems so second nature to us, but it's not. And so for the first few weeks, again, making sure you have some time to do that kind of work makes a huge difference, because then you know that your kiddo is not going to starve, or like that they feel welcome because the food is open to them. That was the first stumbling block, was just making sure that particularly our younger foster child understood that they could get food, and where they could get it from within our kitchen. And now he washes his own clothes. He makes sure to help around with dishes, and he likes being a part of the household. He had never vacuumed before because he lived in a place with a dirt floor, so vacuuming was not something you do. So he loved using the vacuum, and he'd only sweep. And then, like, this weekend was vacuum day. We figured out vacuuming. And it may sound silly in a little way, but these moments of pride and these moments of capability are really, really important. And you just want to build them into your schedule of how you're going to take time, like during the week, to teach a skill around the house, because they're all new. They are all new skills. They may be skills that they did, but the way we do them is new.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I think that is one of the nuances. If anyone listening is experienced with foster care, that's definitely a difference with, children in this unaccompanied refugee minors program that are coming from another culture, another country, especially where a lot of our youth are coming from very rural areas or coming from situations of extreme poverty. So there's definitely a lot of those just differences. And I think the first 6 months that a youth is in your home, there is a lot more hands-on focus needed from the foster parent. I think eventually the youth does find their comfort and their groove, and you build that trust. But I would say, just as you would expect when you have an infant, that first 6 months, like, they need your 100% attention, less extreme, because like they can go to the bathroom and some of those things, but that's kind of an analogy to think about it, that, you know, they're in a new environment, a new culture, they don't speak the language, they've never been in this type of home setting before. So it can be definitely a lot. So I'm glad that you asked that, Julie. I think there is a time commitment, to be sure, but families do find a way to make it work, even working full time. So
and family in Massachusetts, the Family Medical Leave Act, or family that actually does cover foster care. So just keep that in mind with your workplace. Like if you need to take a day off or something, you are protected.
yes,
So.
yes. Yeah, and we have some more questions. And I know time flies in these short webinars, so I am okay to go a few minutes over. Angelica, I don't know if you can go a few
Sure.
minutes over, just so we answer all the questions. And the recording will be available of this webinar if you need to log off on time, but would like to see later what we continue to talk about. Make sure to get that recording out to you all. But the next question is it recommended that teens have outside counseling? Does the agency help set that up? So Angelica, I could speak to this a little bit first from a staff point of view. So our youth, depending on their age and the program they're in, sometimes there is a requirement. Angelica has actually fostered youth that are both in federal custody in kind of a sister program of the unaccompanied refugee minors for children that are more recently arrived to the United States. And then there's also our youth that are in state custody in the larger unaccompanied refugee minors program. So for the minors that are in federal custody, there's actually a requirement that they have clinical support, and we do actually have a clinician on staff that meets with all of the youth in that program. And she also offers some group therapy as well. So that's a resource for those youth. For youth in the URM program, absolutely, if it would be in the child's best interests, you know, every child in our program has a case manager that's working with them ongoing on different goals. So definitely, if the youth is open to that, we would want to encourage that. And even in cases where the youth is maybe resistant to that, we would try to work towards that. All of the youth in the unaccompanied refugee minors program have mass health insurance. So they are able to have their mental health appointments covered for by the state. So there are different providers out there. Certainly in certain regions, our program started out in Worcester. So we have a lot of providers and connections in Worcester. For our families that are growing into other communities like Boston, we are, you know, starting to build more relationships in more communities. But absolutely, we are working with a population that every one of our kids has experienced significant trauma. And so definitely we are advocates for therapeutic services. And like Angelica said, sometimes there's other extracurriculars out there that are just as beneficial to the youth's mental health, like joining a track team or exercising. And we want our kids to be involved in anything that would benefit them. But Angelica, I don't know if there's anything you would add from your experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with the two different programs, with the federal, the health insurance is very challenging to navigate. And so thankfully, the Ascentria has a person on staff for the therapeutic piece, the clinical, well, the therapeutic piece. And that has been really, that has made a big difference for both for our kiddo and also for us, because the expectation isn't that we're the therapist. We may discuss traumatic moments if the child wants to, and our current kiddo wants to talk to us about it. But there's not a lot of, as many times as we may have had traumatic experiences in our own lives, or known other people who've had traumatic experiences, it's really not our job as the foster parents to do the social works therapizing. So it really is helpful to have somebody else doing that piece. Sorry. I'm gonna.
Yeah. It's okay. The air is so dry. It's so cold out there these days.
I'm gonna just cough a little bit more and
Yeah,
then.
no, go ahead. Um, yeah, so, and if anyone has more questions about that piece, feel free to send those in as Angelica's taking a breather. Um, and I know sometimes, these nuances are confusing. So if anyone ever wants to talk over the phone about the differences between the two programs we're alluding to, I am happy to do that as well. But it's a lot to cover in just a short webinar for sure.
Yeah, so we noticed one of the things with the therapeutic sessions is that they are private, right? We're not part of that, and that's fine. I think it's a good thing. But we've had to just make sure that we don't schedule anything right after. That we make sure that there's time for the child to just like go hang out in their room, listen to music, draw, whatever they need to do. They just, it's a lot that they might be sharing in those sessions, and they're good for them. And we find that they come back out, when they come back out of their room, they're feeling like connecting again. But yeah, I hope that
Yeah.
answers that question.
Definitely.
From
Definitely. Yeah. And I think it's important to understand cultural barriers with mental health services. A lot of our youth come from countries where going to therapy is very stigmatized, and oh, you don't go to therapy unless you're crazy, right? And I think there's even some of that in the United States that we're still working through in our culture as well. So we definitely try to break that down.
I would say we didn't talk about it as therapy in the beginning. We talked about it as social work, and now slowly we're making the change in language. And our kiddo, I speak Spanish fluently, and our kiddo is from Guatemala, but they do not speak Spanish fluently. They speak Mayan Quechua. So they're attending these sessions with an interpreter, and the interpreter themselves is actually shared with me that some of the lessons that they're learning in the sessions have really been helpful about breathing and other things, and has from his culture tried to say, like, from, I know this isn't our culture, it's still helpful. So
Right.
it's a, it's a multi-layered process that's happening with at least our young person. The experience that we're having with him is that there's, like you said, there's a stigma around therapy. So it's not necessarily that we're talking about, oh, how'd your therapy session go, or you have therapy. It's more about a connection to the person, and you have a meeting with so-and-so.
Right.
It's your time to talk with so-and-so. And I think
Right.
that's helped. There's been no resistance to it.
Great. Okay. Great. Very important question. So thank you for that. All right. And then I think our final question that we're going to end on, and that will have been all the questions, is how has the integration gone with him joining high school and making friends? And can you speak about language barriers if there are any? So I'm sure you have a lot to share on this, Angelica, since you are in the field of education yourself professionally. So yeah, definitely a good question for you.
Yeah, so the decision, there were some decisions. This is a 14-year-old young person, boy, and I say that because often when we think about 14-year-old boys, they could be in 8th grade, they could be in high school. It really is very much on the line, and boys are often thought of as maybe maturing a little bit and slower, and our kiddo is a very young, very naive 14-year-old in many ways, and might have done well in 8th grade. We chose with the school for him to go into high school, knowing that he might do 5 years there, because the resources were there, and because there were like classes that would be better for integrating. So I think, you know, being able, try to have an open conversation with your school district and employer social worker in that conversation, and I think the right thing will happen. Some in our case, our kiddo is doing 2 courses in an SEI, sheltered English immersion program, and then one class in remedial math that he's actually catching up into. Almost, he'll be at almost 9th grade math by the end of this semester, which is really exciting for him. And then he's taking one class that's an elective within the high school, has a Spanish speaking teacher, it's drumming, but that has been a way of expanding a little bit the window of kids, and that actually I think really helped him make the jump to being on the track team, where there's kids from all over, but not, you know, so a small percentage of people who speak Spanish and 0% of people other than him. So there is a percentage now of people who speak Quechua on the team. So those little incremental steps that the big win this weekend was one of the kids from the track team lives down the street from us, and that he's friends with, and we said, go to so-and-so's house, knock on their door, and see if they want to go for a run. You know, like, he was milling around the house, and we're trying to get him to be around people his own age. He's very comfortable with us, but, you know, for real development, spending more time, not just class time. And he did it. This was a conversation we've been having for weeks. But it's just, again, the way he would make friends back home would have been, he'd just walk out the steps and they would all be playing. So this is very different here. You know, kids are so scheduled that that's not possible. And trying to make that argument, it's been a really slow incremental process. But he is making friends. And we also have a group within Ascentria of other Quechua speakers, so that they're not as close by, but that has really helped. And we have done some things with other foster families, done outings and stuff, and that's also been fantastic for us, fantastic for him. You know, it's really nice to talk with other, like, hang out, do things with other people who are fostering.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I think at Ascentria, we really pride ourselves on that, and that's definitely a goal that we want to have, is that sense of community amongst our unique unaccompanied refugee minors program, because these youth that are here in Massachusetts, there's, you know, they share that unique experience of coming here unaccompanied and maybe having no family here, or, you know, just a few distant relatives in different states, but it can be very isolating. And so we do work to build those connections, and it's wonderful that, Angelica, you guys take advantage of that. And yeah, and I think as we're closing here, I think a main takeaway that I hope you've heard here is you're not in this alone, right? As a foster parent, you do have the support of the agency, of the team that's wrapping around the child, and using those resources, like using the school resources, using the social worker resources, you know, the clinical or therapeutic resources that we have. You're not in it alone, and that's really important. One message here says, I really appreciate your thoughtful answers. Thank you, Angelica. So I completely echo that and appreciate your time. I don't know, Angelica, if there's any last thing you'd like to share, or are you feeling good about what we've covered tonight?
No, I talk too much, but thank you for the great questions. And I just think if you do consider doing this, the whole MAP, taking the MAP course is a great way to start. And it really helped my husband and I walk through our reasoning and walk through the kind of, what are we really ready? Is this something we can really handle? And the answer ended up being like, well, we think so. And some days we feel like, yep, we can handle this, and other days we don't. And then we call out to like our social worker. We have had conversations with our social worker, who's different from our child social worker. And I think that is really helpful, because sometimes you just need someone to say like, yep, that seems kind of normal. You're doing it. I know it doesn't feel good today, but it's going okay. And if you've been a parent before, you know that that's true. It's not, not every day do you feel great as a parent. So I think it really helps to have a team behind you.
Yes. Great.
So
Yeah,
thank you.
and those classes she's mentioning, we're hoping to schedule again in March. So if that's of interest to you, definitely reach out and we can talk about the steps to go to those foster parent trainings that she's talking about. But yeah, so thank you all for your time and your attention. As I mentioned, look out for an email tomorrow with resources and next steps. We hope that this is just the beginning of the conversation, and we thank you for your time. So have a good evening, everyone, and stay healthy.
Be well. Thank you.